Call the meeting to order, and it's 5 after 9. Could we establish a quorum?
Mr. Soyson?
Here.
Ms. Cheatwood? Mr. Canali? Mr. Wathers?
Here.
Mr. Yo? Mr. Huff?
Here.
Ms. Kirkner?
Here.
Commissioner Rothstein?
Here.
Secretary Eisenberg?
Here.
Mr. Chair, please let the record reflect that 5 members are present and we do have a quorum.
Okay, could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any changes in the agenda?
No, we do not.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is carried. Item 5 is a review and approval of minutes for February 6, 2019. Are there any changes, additions, corrections?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 6 is a chance for the public to make any comments. You will also have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Seeing none, we will go to item 7. I do have some things that I've signed. A bunch of them, actually. They've been keeping me busy here. S-17-0037, granted final approval for South Carroll Gateway Industrial Park Lot 5. S-16-0035, approval for Roy's Body Shop, the final approval. S-18-00110, final approval for the South Carroll High School ground-mounted photovoltaic facility. And I can't even read my own writing. 1M-17-0036. It's a one-lot minor subdivision in the Ag District called Blue Ridge Horizons. Okay. Let the record show that Cynthia has arrived. Ex officio, any comments?
Not this time.
Other commission members?
I'll just mention one thing. I think I had sent you guys an email a while back just to remind you guys the Chamber in downtown Sykesville is doing a Main Street Economic Development Strategy presentation next Wednesday, the 27th at 6 p.m. at Intergrace Auditorium. I'm planning to go. I just thought I'd mention it to you all because it might be interesting. It's really about main streets, and even though we don't have any control over main streets, it does kind of relate to what we do. So I think I shot you all an email at one point, so I just wanted to remind you all about that.
That's on Tuesday, you said?
I think it's Wednesday the 27th.
Oh, yes, Wednesday 20th, correct. I'll be there. Right.
That's it.
Okay. Let's go to item 8, administrative report, Madam Secretary.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today. Hope everyone who had a day off yesterday had an enjoyable day off for President's Day holiday. And Dan, with what you just said, the Sykesville, I plan on attending, as well as Claire Stewart, who is our Sykesville liaison. So we're excited to be able to attend that because we do assist our towns with various programs. So for us, it's always good to be in the know with what's going on with the different Main Street programs and just to kind of get some more knowledge about what's happening with this particular program. So we're excited to be able to attend, and that Sykesville's hosting that. Also, I sent out an email from the Maryland Planning Commissioners Association. It came from Bill Butts, who is the chair of the Maryland Planning Commissioners Association. Cynthia and Dan attended the annual conference, and they just wanted to get your thoughts as a planning commission about what planning commissions do, if you find this organization valuable, the future of the organization. So if you have an opportunity to respond back to him, and that email, that would be very appreciated. As well as Mount Airy would like to schedule a joint meeting, so I'm looking for him, Mr. Butts, to be the one to spearhead that, since he requested the meeting. I think they had done that, they had wanted that before, and I think the town was going to host. So we'll work with them again to see what the game plan is and what they want to meet about. They'd also like to include Frederick, because they are a unique municipality that's split between 2 counties. So I think the idea was to have both jurisdictions and the town represented, so we could have just planning discussions on what's happening in the surrounding areas. Also, just a brief update on the comprehensive rezoning. This Thursday, we have a meeting. So to bring you up to date from our last time that we met, the commissioners have completed the review of all of the text that was forwarded for the commercial, industrial, and employment campus. So Thursday will be looking at the breweries amendment that's before you today, reconciling any of your recommendations that move forward with the text that they have now. So hopefully, just in a few more meetings, the text will be, I guess, approved by the commissioners to be updated, and that will be then the text that the public would be looking at for public meetings when we do our outreach meetings, as well as the public hearing. So we're hoping to wrap this text portion up soon and move on to the next phase. And with that, I'm going to call Clay up if he has any extensions for this month.
Linda, one
sorry.
question. Where are we kind of with the next one behind the?
The residential?
Yes.
So we have been working on that. We are looking at the bulk requirements and setbacks now, and once that part's done, we'll send that to our residential focus group for their review. We're not too far behind on that, probably a few months away. And then,
Okay.
Well, to come to you all, probably maybe April.
Okay, I was just kind of curious where
Yeah, and
that-
then you'll review, and then after you have your recommendation, we'll forward that to the board shortly thereafter.
I know the concept was we were kind of taking similar zoning categories together, and I just kind of wanted to kind of get a sense of where we were with the next batch.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question. In the newspaper, the commissioners were talking about changing the medical marijuana
Cannabis, correct,
to commercial.
correct.
Where does that stand at this point?
That was the recommendation for C2, C3?
Yes, for distribution, and then distribution in conjunction with processing in the I-1 and I-2.
Correct, and this is medical use cannabis, not recreational. We are not addressing recreational. In addition, there's the setback from schools.
Yes, it's
That was also
1,000 feet,
addressed.
so we're investigating
Right.
how much of the commercial that knocks out. Is that too large of a setback? Is
Right.
it just right, or does it knock out everything? So that'll be part of our discussion on Thursday, and that's some of the odds and ends that need to be completed before we
And the
move
intent
on.
is not, it is not to conform with other surrounding jurisdictions. It is to do what we believe is the right thing to do, and that is how to handle the distribution of medical marijuana in its proper use, therefore putting it into C2, C3. So,
I do not disagree with that.
right.
I think it's a good idea. Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Clay?
Good morning. As far as the extensions, there were 3 extensions that were received and granted. 2 of the 3 are in the 4th election district, and 1 is in the 7th election district. The one that's in the 7th election district, it was its first extension, Fields at Pheasant Run, corner of 32 and Kate Wagner Road, 7-lot subdivision. Okay, that's one that you had seen planning commission has seen multiple times over the past years. At one time, it was going to be multifamily use. It's been seen numerous times. So that was the first extension that was granted. The other 2, has been extended numerous times. Both of them are in the 4th election district, Skiba Farms is 10th extension. That is an 18-lot subdivision. To give you an update on that, we've been in contact, or the developer has been in contact, and they are movement afoot on finishing up the construction drawings and posting the bond. So this apparently is just to finish the procedure out this year. So they may be moving forward on Skiba Farms. The other extension, also in Election District 4, and that's a 7-lot subdivision, one that has Abbott Acres. We have had numerous folks look at it. We periodically get a builder developer interested in looking at it, but that was the 9th extension that was granted. And those were the 3 extensions that were received and granted. Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
And then Arco with his BZA report.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We had 2 BZA hearings last month on the 10th. Case 6116, Samuel and Terry Carr. Property is located on 2040 West Liberty Road. The request was for a conditional use along with 4 variances for a contractor's equipment storage yard. Property is in the agriculture zone. Land use designation is also agriculture. Final result, the request was granted on January 14th. Second case, case number 6117, Christopher M. Property is located in 4215 Old Hanover Road. The request was for a conditional use and variances for a contractor's equipment storage yard. Property is in the agriculture zone. Land use designation is also agriculture. And the request was granted on January 14th. We have 1 case to be heard this month on the 26th. Case number 6122, Roy Poole. Property is in 1545 Old Westminster Pike. And this is a request for a modification of an existing non-conforming use, as well as an appeal from the zoning administrator's decision for a storage lot for commercial vehicles. This property is in the agriculture zone, and the land use designation is also agriculture. And our comments was that this case is not inconsistent. And that's all I have for the BZA cases.
Any questions? Thank you. Anything else, Linda?
No, that's all I have for my administrative report. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to item 9, a concept preliminary subdivision plan, P-18-0057, Suffolk West, re-subdivision of Lot 5.
Thank you. Good morning, Planning Commission.
Good morning.
Kirsten Agarwal of the Bureau of Development Review. We have for you today a combination of a concept and a preliminary plan for the subdivision for Lot 5 of Suffolk West. It's being processed with the county file number of P-18-0057. As a preliminary plan, there is an action required today for approval of the preliminary plan. And I will let my fellows introduce themselves here.
Yeah, Marty Hackett with CLSI, along with Steve Larson with Tevis Real Estate.
Thank you. So that's the developer and the engineer surveyor. The property owner now is Southern Maryland Oil. They purchased the property during the process of this subdivision. So if we bring our attention to the map here, I also wanted to mention that I've changed the size of the cursor a little bit. I hope it helps you see more where we are talking about. So it's a little bit difficult for me to see it, so I imagine it is for you as well. So this property in question is located in Finksburg, in Election District 4, off of Route 140. You can see the outline here on the corner of Suffolk Road. Cross 140 here to help you get your bearings. This is Sandy Mount Park. You might also be familiar with the large red and white communications tower here. You can see off of 140. This is the site in question. So I'm going to go back a page to talk about the surrounding properties. So as you can see around the property here, a lot of it's residential in the surrounding properties. R40 in this location, R20 over here. There's also some business neighborhood retail zone property to the south and across 140. This whole area is outside of any priority funding or designated growth areas, water and sewer. Everything's on well and septic in this location, including the subject property. The property itself is dual zoned. This region here to the north is R40 zoning. It's about a quarter acre. The rest of it is business neighborhood retail. There are 2 existing commercial uses on the site. The business neighborhood retail area is used for a Jiffy Mart gas station convenience store. That was approved in a site plan in the 80s. And this region here, although you can't see it too well, is in a billboard. And that has been there since before the gas station was approved in the 80s. So everything's existing. We're not proposing any changes with this subdivision plan. You can see from this shot here, between the 2 features is a grassy area. It's actually quite sloped, and it gets steeper once you see the brush there. There's a stream in this region here, as well as a outfall from the stormwater management system for the gas station. And as you can also see, there is access from both Suffolk Road and onto and off of 140 there. So the proposed subdivision will create 1 new tract from the existing lot. This is a re-subdivision of Lot 5. This will become Lot 5A. This is Tract A, essentially dividing the 2 commercial uses into 2 separate properties. There's, again, no disturbance proposed. Everything's already there. Everything's been there for quite some time. However, the proposed new size for Tract A is beneath what is required in the R40 district. It's only about 6,000 square feet, just a little bit under 6,000 square feet. So that did require a Board of Zoning Appeals hearing for that. That was held as cases 6095 last August. As a part of the record for that BZA case, the zoning administrator sent a comment memo to the BZA noting that based on the proposed, let me get my wording right here. Stating that the proposed reductions and variances would create a non-buildable lot, which is why you see the language here, non-buildable. Again, everything's existing. They can maintain what is there already, that's signed, but it is considered non-buildable. The case was approved for all variances to the lot size, lot width, and all setbacks for all 4 yards in August 3rd, 2018. There's a copy in your packet there, too. So once BZA was taken care of, Development Review received that initial subdivision plan that same month. TRC was held September 24th, and neighbors were notified, but there were no citizen comments for that, and we haven't heard from anybody since then either. So regarding the plan itself, Lot 5 is again proposed to be split into 2. Here's the division line there. You'll see Lot 5 will still maintain a little bit of its R40 zoning but the use is approved in this location here. There are no physical changes, but we do have a few easements shown on the plan. You can see an ingress-egress easement here for Tract A to access their property. There is also a small drainage and utility easement here near the outfall for the stormwater management for the gas station that essentially connects to the original platted drainage and utility easement from the original subdivision. And then the county will also receive an easement for a water resource protection easement in the area of the variable stream buffer for the entirety of Tract A and a portion of Lot 5A. And again, there's no disturbance, there's no grading proposed. The plan's been approved by environmental inspections. The existing access and new easement to allow access to Tract A satisfies the requirements for SHA, the roads department, as well as engineering. And planning stated that the plan is applicable to all, consistent with all applicable policies and recommendations. Zoning has approved the plan with the approval of the Board of Zoning Appeals hearing and the notes added to the plan regarding that and the billboard. And there were multiple agencies that were exempt for this plan, including floodplain, forest conservation, landscaping, stormwater management, and all other agencies have approved it with no comment. And as this is a non-residential subdivision, Chapter 156 concurrent sheet management is not applicable. And pursuant to Chapter 155, staff recommends approval of the preliminary plan with the 3 conditions regarding the water resource management easement, the 2 private easements, and of course, that any changes were to come before the board for any additional changes.
Could you have any comments, additional comments?
Only that, the only reason we're doing this is to separate the 2 properties, because they're 2 different companies now. One, the convenience store, and then Tevis Real Estate is going to hold the property for the billboard itself. The only thing I would ask is if there's any possibility, since there's no construction, nothing going on here, is does this qualify to just come right back to the chair for signature of the record plat ultimately, would be my question.
So by doing this, theoretically, Tevis Oil could sell that gas station and it'd still own the...
Well, they don't own the gas.
They sold it. It is.
They already sold it.
They already sold it.
That, the
They
convenience store all
obviously have some
sold.
sort of
All,
arrangement
yes,
through
and all
that to
easements
be able
for
to retain
Tevis
it.
Real Estate to function for that property with access and all that is all taking place in all the agreements, yes.
They sold the gas stations, but want to hold on to the billboards,
Correct.
basically.
Any questions? Seems like a no-brainer.
Well, the
I wasn't
BZA
gonna say
approved it, so,
I was going to, I decided.
yeah.
Do I hear a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve the plan, subject to, pursuant to Chapter 155, subject to the 3 staff recommendations in the report. And that we also, that it would come directly back to the chairman for signatures.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Item 10, text amendment, IR District Breweries, the continued discussion. And I think we all got the additional change here. Hi, Kelly.
Good morning. So if you recall, at our February 6th meeting, we introduced the text amendment to the IR district for breweries, and you asked that we make the changes with regards to how it would be in our existing code, and for Mr. Devilbus to be here and other applicable staff to answer any additional questions you may have. So with that, Mary, if you could just walk us through what the changes that you made in the Chapter 158, and then we can go from there.
The only changes since, from the proposed text amendment that first came forward was adding those two definitions that a brew, and this is how other codes in Maryland do it. A facility that's been issued a Class 5 manufacturer's license is a brewery. A facility that's been issued a Class 7 manufacturer's license is a microbrewery. And we felt that the definitions were important because as we move forward, even though this is proposing both of those uses to be allowed in the IR district, Thursday when we get to the board, we're going to have to talk some more about what other districts these uses go in, and there may be some, particularly the commercial, where only the microbrewery would be allowed. So we do feel it is important to have those definitions in there. We did take out from our original proposal that's before the board right now, defining it specifically like the state does right now with the 22,500 barrels for microbrewery and anything over for brewery, because there's constantly proposals in Annapolis to raise that. So this at least keeps it so that we wouldn't have to keep coming back if they make it 25,000, for instance.
Mary, I apologize. I had to miss that night meeting. The difference between a brewery and microbrewery just has to do with the size or the...
No, it's actually a whole lot more complicated than that, as Kelly was explaining that night, but from a zoning perspective, and that's what we're trying to keep separate here, is there's all kinds of differences in the licenses and what they can do, but from a land use perspective, which is, in this case, the size of how much is being produced, that is the relevant issue.
It was really important to separate microbrewery from brewery because of the underlying other.
Again, not necessarily in the IR district, but in the C2 district, where it's also being proposed that microbreweries be allowed. It was not being proposed that a brewery be allowed. That's more of an industrial use. So that is the revised proposal that's before you today. And Tom Devilbus and Clay Black are here because the specific questions asked several weeks ago were regarding the original proposal that you sent to the Board of County Commissioners limited the accessory uses, which are listed there, to no more than 49%. And there was a lengthy discussion several weeks ago about the feasibility of that for the operation of these facilities. But I do believe that Tom has some comments he wanted to make regarding how that would be enforced, and also how it relates to the way it's written for the agricultural district where it is limited, and that's something that you just looked at a year or two ago. So.
Thank you, Mary. Tom Devilbus, Director of Land and Resource Management. Yes, I'd like to just make sure that refresh everybody's memory. Not even a year ago, the Board of County Commissioners did work with the farm alcohol producers on a very similar topic with wineries, breweries, and distilleries. And with some of the language that was proposed there was this issue of the accessory uses. The accessory uses as being proposed here and listed are identical as they are in the Farm Alcohol Producer Code. But what I wanted to read you was where it states about the percentage or the amount of those uses and what they can occupy. So under the conditional use requirements in the farm alcohol producers, it says accessory uses of the farm alcohol producer are permitted as outlined in 158-070-F23, and that is where we list the exact same accessory uses that you have here on your proposal. Then it goes on to say, the floor area for beverage tasting, sales of alcohol produced on site and other alcoholic beverages, accessory food sales related to the beverage tasting, and retail sales facilities for sale of novelty and gift items related to the beverage shall not exceed the on-floor area being used for production and storage of such beverage. And then it goes on to say sales of non-agricultural products shall be limited to no more than 25% of the floor area for the entire retail sales facility. So with the farm alcohol producers, there was actually a threshold set there that basically you cannot exceed in those accessory uses what you're using for your actual production and storage part of your operations. So it's almost like a 50-50 split there where, you know, if you are producing something and you're storing it, say 10,000 square feet, then you have 10,000 square feet for the accessory uses to occupy also. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood that there was something in that legislation that was just passed less than a year ago that addressed this issue of the percentage of accessory use with very similar operations. Any questions for that?
Right, but that's a farm, so the area available, we were more worried about huge, giant events. In an IR district, I'm not as worried as I am for a farm, so.
Why not?
Well, it just seems, I guess we were just thinking, I shouldn't say we, sorry, I should say me.
Well, we agreed.
Yeah, that for the farm and these large, in the ag district, we're talking much larger areas and operations, you know, where they would have large scale, maybe wedding, I don't know. And we
Where it could be more of a banquet facility than an actual.
Control that as opposed to a commercial / industrial where you're already controlled based upon the size of the lots and everything and what's already being used, so.
Because our concern, refresh my memory back then, was about something really not being truly a winery, but more of a event facility than anything.
Right, okay.
Hold on a second.
I think that, yeah.
I mean, that was going through my mind.
Maybe I would agree with you to a certain extent, but it's just a matter of scale, because remember, part of this was not just the size, it was the use.
Right.
So we didn't want the use of the accessory uses to get bigger than the actual primary use, which was the winery, brewery, or distillery.
Right, and I understand that, but I guess, and I'm also going to insert that when you said, what was that, a year or two ago we went through all
Less than a year, May of 18.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed exponentially even in the past couple of years. And so, like, breweries that I've been to that are mostly in the industrial, tasting's a large part of their operation. So, as opposed to a winery, I'm still struggling with trying to correlate an ag farm to a IR commercial.
Well, I would say, though, that if you do not put any type of restriction on the accessory uses, then you are not being consistent with what we just recently adopted with very similar use. The uses are identical. You know, it was a farm alcohol producer, which was wineries, breweries, and distilleries. So the use is essentially the same. It's just in a different zone. So I just wanted to make sure you were fully aware of that as we move forward here with this.
Right. So it's not, is it fair to them too?
If I could also jump in, because I reread the Class 5 brewery license language, which I know through the state can change. So with that being said, it can change. But not only would we be limiting based on potentially a percentage if this is the request, but also the current license that they would hold, that a brewer would hold, not a microbrewer, a full-blown Class 5 brewer, is 2,000 barrels per year for beer that is allowed to be sold for on-premises consumption. So 2,000 barrels per year is already far, far less than the 49% that we talked about the last time. I think 49% of even the microbrewery amount, well, 49%, I should say, of the microbrewery amount, which is the 22,500 barrels per year, is over 11,000 barrels. That would be allowed for on-site consumption. But currently, the state limits these license holders to 2,000 barrels per year for on-site consumption. And that's also, I mean, I know we're talking about the tasting rooms because that's what jumps to mind anytime we think of a brewery, but not every brewery has a tasting room associated with it to begin with. And in fact, in order to have a tasting room, you have to go through the state, the federal, and then the county licensing to obtain a Class D license.
You're talking about barrels, we're talking about area.
Right.
So
I'm just pointing out, right, and I understand that. I'm just pointing out that there's an additional limit on how much they can even sell. So even if the floor area was, say, 75%, you know, then they're still limited by how much can be sold each year for that use. So I guess my question that I would pose would be, why limit the floor area if the distribution and manufacturing is still the primary use? What then is the goal of limiting the floor area of a tasting room?
Plus, I think also the one thing we were discussing at the Wednesday night meeting was we don't want to be restrictive so that we always have to come back and get variances and keep changing.
Yeah,
and so
every time,
we're already coming up against it again with the farm alcohol. So we have to really consider what we put in so that we're not constantly, and this is going to be changing too. So, and also make it so that staff can enforce it.
What is the big concern with having like a percentage does not exceed 49%?
Well, it's just what Tom was saying, if we put it in for the farm, how fair is that to have the
Well, no,
farm?
I mean, I'm saying why should we
Because,
not
like,
have it in?
If you have, like, this is floor area, so I don't know how many breweries and stuff you've been to. A lot of time, the tasting floor area is huge. I mean, just
Compared
because
to
they
the brewing area, I don't, yeah.
Yes, because they want more of a community environment and feel. It's not necessarily everybody there is even drinking. It's just a very large area. They have, like, the one I'm thinking of, they have, like, the cornhole, and they have a play area. I mean, it's just become this giant.
And as I think that's a big abyss of a room. I've been to some of them, and it's just a big open, huge floor area with picnic tables or whatever.
Right, it's like, it's what they call themselves the community I mean, it's a little unusual, but, and and like she said, they're already limited how much they can sell. So it's like, do you then why limit
The space.
Because the concern is that they would have a big area that's supposed to be just for the brewing part that they really don't need. Is that what if you're playing a percentage game?
With the strict percentage, and or you'd find, like you said, that somebody comes in because they need 53% of their floor area, and then they're requesting a variance because their tasting room exceeds the manufacturing production, side of things. Also, I think one of you actually pointed out at our last meeting that sometimes it's a combined indoor-outdoor use as well. So then do we calculate that outdoor use as part of the floor area, which would then potentially exceed the 49%? I mean, I think there are plenty of circumstances where it would be 49%. I just think that placing that limit on it without fully thinking it through and considering the effect perhaps is not achieving the goal that's desired. I think that if the goal is to assure that the production and manufacturing is the primary business here, and that's what's really the driving business and the moneymaker, and then the tasting room is the accessory use, that doesn't necessarily need to be accomplished by a floor area percentage.
And someone cannot do all this unless they get the brewery or microbrewery license.
Correct. They actually can't even do it with a microbrewery license. They can only do it with a full brewery license.
Okay.
So they can only have a tasting room if they have a full Class 5 brewery license, as currently and by the state law.
So it's not just like I'm going to go out and pretend I'm a brewer and just open a restaurant instead.
No, it's actually a state licensing process, a federal permitting process, and then in order to have a tasting room, you have to come to our local Board of Licensing Commissioners and obtain a Class D liquor license.
It's not a bar. Don't even think it's a bar.
And there's no liquor.
I'm just trying to educate my.
And
I
as is
guess I should have
currently-
called my friend Pete Samios to educate me all about this.
Well, Pete and I have had lengthy discussions about this recently.
Next time I'm
Yes.
at the table with him,
The
I'll.
zones we're thinking about, the industrial and the commercial, the farm, we were also worried about, people move out there next to a farm and they don't expect all of a sudden hundreds of people to be.
Cynthia,
so IR in the.
Yeah, I understand what Tom is saying. I
Right.
get what Tom is saying, but I will also say I do think it's inherently. It's a little bit like comparing an apple to an orange. These are different of animals.
Well, that's what we.
A winery in the ag district is a totally different kind of animal than a brewery in a commercial district.
Or an IR.
Or IR, or a commercial district, of any kind of commercial district.
And this is also why we're trying to follow more and let the state dictate.
Right.
And all we do is follow the state guidelines. That's why we eliminated the number of barrels and all that stuff. So, Jay, did you want to say something?
Please help us
out. Yes, my name is Jay Voigt. I'm the zoning administrator for Carroll County. One of the reasons for the 49% requirement to determine accessory use in the industrial zoning district If you have a brewery in of itself may not take up a large amount of area. But if you have a tasting room or something that takes up a large amount of area, yes, there's a limit on the number of barrels that you can sell a year, but nothing says that you couldn't use that large room for other activities on the property. Nothing says you couldn't have weddings there or banquets or caters if the area is so large that it can accept that. The whole idea behind the tasting room, yes, it is an accessory use. But to keep it an accessory use and not morph into something more, which if I was a businessman and I had space that was available to rent out to other activities, it could be done. So then what becomes the principal use? Is it a rental hall where you're renting out space? Or is it a brewery with a tap room, with an accessory use, not something that's major? So that was one of the reasons for the 49%, was to ensure that it is the smaller portion of the brewery tap room.
And in response to that, and Jay and I have had conversations and bantered back and forth about the 49%, but in response to that, I would just say that we are still governed by the zoning code, which limits us to accessory uses, and accessory uses is a defined term within the zoning code. So I'm sure someone, and as Jay says to me, could always make the argument that a wedding would be an accessory use to a brewery, but you would have to meet that threshold. It's not like there's no threshold that one would have to meet in order to say, oh, this is inherently associated with a brewery, so now I can do it. And the language that Tom read out of the farm alcohol production, where it limits the area in the ag zone, I think that's why, I'm sure that's why you put the 25% limitation for sales of non-product, like merchandise. If they were selling T-shirts, that's limited to a specific percentage because that's not retail sales of the product that's being manufactured on the site. That's something else. You know, if they're selling mugs, I don't know, anything like that, that is limited in the ag to a specific percentage. But I'm not going to say that there could never be an IR piece, because there certainly have been and could be that are 50 acres, who knows. But I think you're spot on in talking about the differences between the ag zone and the IR zone, and that because you do have a lot of times residential neighbors in the ag zone, and if you had a 50-acre ag piece that was becoming a farm alcohol producer and wanted to have 25 acres or 40 acres of that where people are coming playing games, I mean that can be an intense use in a zone that you might not want that sort of intense use.
Well, and I also will make, there's a slight argument here for me too regarding the value of land. If I'm going to eat up a lot of space in a commercial or IR, I better have a really good reason to do so because of the economics of it. Right. Where inherently, if I'm in a winery out in the ag district, me burning through, at 5,000 an acre, me burning through an extra couple acres, who cares? Right. That's not the price per acre of when you're dealing with that. So I get the concern, and not that I don't have a concern, and maybe that we should consider the percentage, but I go back to, I think we got to be real careful, because I think the whole winery in the ag district is a very different animal than this brewery in a commercial district. It just is.
I view it very differently.
I do too. But I get the concerns that Tom and Jay have too, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for the other part, so I'm kind of struggling. So I want your guys' thoughts on what you think we should do.
And I do want to clarify just that our request is just for the IR district, but that in county staff and everybody else thinking about this, everybody's thinking about it in terms of the new proposed text, and that's why the commercial districts are coming up. But our request is just applicable to the IR zone.
So, Tom, are you proposing that we keep the 49%?
No, sir. I'm just pointing out that we just passed legislation that established something like this, and I really don't see, I look at uses, and I see very similar uses, and yes, the ag zone, there's a lot more spacious area, but still the uses are identical. And what you're doing is you're putting what I consider to be a commercial use, in a lot of the accessory purposes here are more commercial than they are industrial. You're putting them in the industrial zone. And so I think personally that you should have the same type of bounds on those uses that you do when you stick a commercial use like a winery, brewery, distillery in the ag zone, which isn't ag in a lot of cases. It's on the borderline. So that's all I want to do is bring it up to you. We'll enforce whatever you recommend to the commissioners, and whatever the commissioners adopt, we'll enforce it or attempt to enforce it. So I appreciate your time to be able to bring it to your attention.
And the changes that planning has made, the 49% is out.
Correct. Based on the discussion last week, and that's why we wanted to bring Tom and Jay back, because that was some of the concern you all had too. You wanted to hear their concerns on how they would address things, so to make your ultimate recommendation.
I know, it's not an easy,
No.
it's like,
Well, because the main purpose of the IR is not some of these accessory uses. So,
right, but some of these accessory uses are needed in order for the brewery / microbrewery to succeed. Just like the
I'm
winery.
just struggling. I'm just struggling with.
I know, it's not an easy.
And just for background information, these accessory uses were pulled, as Tom said, directly from the farm alcohol production text. But part of the background of that is that they're also discussed specifically in the state licensing. They're allowed to do these sorts of activities under their state license. And so that's part of the reason we just wanted to flesh them out and, put them in here the same way that they were in the farm alcohol producer in the ag zone. Because their state licensing specifically guides the amount of tours that they can have and tastings and, tastings other than people coming to a tap room, but like a tasting associated with a tour and things like that. So there are specific, there's specific language as to these in the state law.
And that's why these changes were made at the last meeting. In essence, what Kelly just said, let's just follow the state regulations.
Dan, what are you struggling with on this? I mean, the intent is not to overregulate, to keep within standards of the state. So what part of this, I'm just curious.
I get the point of what Jay and Tom are saying regarding what we just did with the wineries and how we did a percentage related to that. But at the same time, I do get that this is a different use. I'm just saying I'm struggling. I'm not saying, and unfortunately, I didn't have the benefit of being here that one evening. So that's why I'm kind of asking,
Well, we pretty much summarized it, and then
Right.
Yeah.
we even had a slight discussion that if the state's already, why are these even accessory uses if it's part of their, but, I mean, we will keep it likely as accessory use, but it's getting down to, like Commissioner said, just, we have to be careful not to
Regulate.
because like we were saying, last thing we want our variance is to have to come through and then have to go through and change this again, because things are still gonna change. They've changed immensely in just 2 years.
Yeah, no.
And then the use is the same, but it's a different zone.
So you want to eliminate the 49%?
Yes, I think it should be.
And the number of barrels.
Well, just leave it whatever the state says.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, are there any,
I mean, do you have a concern that it's going to become, or that it's unfair that we limited the farm to 49%, or?
I try to understand all sides. I understand what they're saying,
I do
but I
too.
go back to that I do think it's inherently different. So I think a winery in the ag district is a very different animal than a brewery in a commercial or IR district. So, I could live, if everybody else feels very comfortable about it, I can I can live with it.
I
You know
don't
what I
know if it's
mean?
everybody else. It's me, I know Alec was comfortable with it.
Yeah, so.
Getting rid of the 49%.
Yeah, that's why we have this.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe what we
Were
ought to
you,
do.
Jeff?
I wasn't here.
But how do you feel?
I like less regulation as a general rule, so if we can take out the 49%. Because otherwise, I mean, to have it just for the sake of consistency, and yet people are going to be coming in asking for variances left and right, we're not going to have any consistency, so I'd be inclined to
Plus
give it.
indoor and outdoor. Is it outdoor too? Because I didn't think about.
Right.
And also, I will say this, I think people fail to remember that, zoning codes are are supposed to be living documents. So it's not like if this suddenly creates a huge issue
we can address it.
that we can't address it.
I have
Jan?
no problem with it, but I do think we're going to see the wineries coming right back to us.
And they can make a case, then, right? We'd listen.
Yep.
Okay, let's do it this way. Do I hear a motion to accept the changes that we discussed in this document?
Mr. Chairman, can I say one additional thing, please?
Sure, Jim.
Thank you. One thing you need to remember is the 49% only applies in the industrial zoning district. If you did a brewery in a commercial district, other uses such as catering hall, restaurants, and stuff like that are allowed with it. So yes, you can do it in the commercial zoning districts and have no restrictions. In the IR, since it's an industrial zoning, that's what we want to keep it. We want it to be industrial, not commercial. And that was the intent of the 49%, was to keep it as what the industrial zone is. It's industrial property, it's not commercial property. If you want to do the bigger events and have more with your brewery, do it in a commercial zoning district where you can do it. But if it's in the industrial zones only, then you're limited to the 49%. That's what my recommendation would be. Thank you.
That's not what this is saying, right?
Correct. No, we do not have a limitation.
Right.
List.
And again, I mean, my whole point is, to be, I won't say less restrictive, but not overburden, developers and those that want to, put something in place with additional regulatory guidelines when we already have established state guidance, right? That's in place. I understand that these are living and breathing documents, but you don't want folks having to come back in for amendments or changes when it's not necessary. If we just use a standard that the state has already accepted and there's already regulatory direction and guidelines for federal, state, and local to be in place when somebody establishes this type of, this type of brewery. So
Jay, are you saying that by keeping the 49%, that would dissuade a brewery from coming in the industrial? I mean, otherwise they would still be doing whatever they're doing. They would just have that guideline that they have to follow.
I don't think it would dissuade anybody from coming into IR for a brewery. All it's doing is if you're a brewery in a commercial zoning district, like I say, you can do more, but if you're in the industrial district, your purpose is more as a brewery, you're probably going to be a larger brewery, producing more than what somebody in a commercial zoning district would be doing. Because you could do a full-size brewery like Coors or anything else in the industrial zoning district.
You're making the distinction between industrial and commercial zoning, and I get what your point
That's what it is. I mean, we want to keep our industrial, and our commercial is for that, commercial. And that was the intent of the 49%, was to honor what our purpose is for the industrial district.
Because the industrial district is not
So,
designed for
like if you had
restaurants.
a very large brewery, like a Coors or somebody else come in, and they did 49% of their floor space, that'd be a huge area. But they're industrial. Like I say, their purpose there is to brew, not to have parties.
And what you're trying to do is in an industrial.
Is in the industrial, and currently the industrial zone, not the IR but the IG, is the only zone in the county where you can have a brewery to begin with as it stands now. So we're trying to add it to the IR. And I'll go back to the limitation on the accessory uses. If you look at the current IR text, it provides for accessory uses already and it defines them, again, matches with the definition in the definition section of the code. But then it says retail sales and service of products manufactured on or distributed from the site. So we went a little bit beyond that in kind of outlining the actual state law, but that's already in the code, and there is no 49% or any percentage limitation on that. I mean, it comes down to an interpretation on what is customary and incidental. Is really all you're doing is a tap room and you have one little brewing thing set up back there and you're just trying to hold yourself out as a brewery? Probably not, because I'd offer to you that the cost of getting through the state and local licensing, you're not going to do that because it's not going to be worth it. But I think that to put the percentage limitation concerns me because of all of the issues that it has the potential to create. And I think that there are enough other mechanisms in place in our zoning code as it is and in the other licensing that they have to obtain that protect some of these concerns about this becoming a huge commercial use. And also, like you pointed out, if it does become an issue, then perhaps it's reached to the level that warrants addressing. But currently, I can think of one brewery in the county who has, from walking the site, I can tell you their manufacturer production side of it is much larger than their tap side of things. But I think to put a limitation because of a fear of Coors or Guinness or a huge brewery coming and having this giant tap room and a limited manufacturing portion is not what we're going to see in this county. I think we're going to see a lot of small craft brewers and home brewers who want to open and who are already limited in the land that they can occupy. And so we're just creating another potential zone that they could be in the county.
I don't think there's a concern of a fear. I think my concern is of overregulating and putting another level of bureaucracy and effort in trying to get a developer to put a microbrew, whatever it is, in a place. And there's guidelines already that are in place that are directing through the state. Well, it's through the state, federal, and us to put this in place, and it does not address a 49%. So it's already, to me, the due diligence has already been done by the state, and we should just adhere to that, as opposed to putting another level of restriction and concern. I mean, but I don't think there's any fear of large establishments, that are not going to be
giant tap room
reluctant to come in here. So, okay.
There may also be competitive forces. I mean, we want to let them play out. I mean, if you want to have a big tasting room, you're probably going to want to be in a commercial district because you've got better parking, you've got other amenities and so forth, as opposed to next to a concrete plant in an industrial zone or something. So I'm just one member, but I tend to think that I'd like less regulation, not more. I'd like to make it easier for these folks that are trying to do these things, not harder. I do have one quick comment. It's completely inconsequential, and maybe I'm wrong. Under C2S1, the paragraph there that says such operations shall be in compliance, shouldn't in compliance be 2 words?
Yes. Yes, it should.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
our frustrated English professor here.
I was an English major in college, so yes.
Oh, hey, we all do it. I write stuff and do that all the time. So, subject to any public comment we have, I guess I'll wait to make a motion.
Yeah. Or the next question I have is, anyone in the public have any comments regarding this?
I don't think there is any public.
I'm not sure there is any.
Nope, I think it's all staff.
All right, do I hear any kind of a motion? Let's start with, is there a motion to approve the changes in the breweries in the IR district that we have here?
I'll make a move. I have so moved.
To
approve the whole thing.
As presented.
As presented.
All of the, basically the two major changes.
Correct.
And, yes, and then to remove the,
To remove the.
Well, that
number-
49% isn't in
In
here.
essence,
It's
to
not even
remove the number of barrels and
that's what
also
I'm saying, as
49.
presented in
Well,
what we received
yeah, it's not even in here.
Yeah.
today.
And I would also recommend to forward this to the Board of County
Oh, yeah,
Commissioners.
definitely, and recommend forward to the Board of County Commissioners.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 11, public comments. Seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Wow.
I want to say something too.